Have you ever noticed how life sometimes strips everything from you, relationships, opportunities, even your sense of certainty, leaving you standing in a silence so vast it feels unbearable? This is not punishment. This is the universe whispering, sometimes screaming, that it's time to let go. Letting go is not weakness. It is the ultimate act of alignment. It is the recognition that what you cling to may be holding you back from who you are truly meant to become. The universe forces us to let go because the structures we build around ourselves, our habits, our expectations, our identities, are often fragile illusions of control. When they crumble, the void that opens is not emptiness, it is possibility. Pain, loss, disappointment, they are not enemies but guides. They carve pathways to self-discovery, to a life unshackled by fear or attachment. You must trust the process, even when it feels like the ground beneath you is collapsing. For every door that closes, the universe nudges another open, sometimes quietly, sometimes violently. The challenge is to release the fear of the unknown, to surrender the need to understand everything before it happens. The universe works in cycles, in patterns far beyond our comprehension. By letting go, you step into the rhythm of life, aligning yourself with forces far greater than the ego's desire to control. Letting go is the cultivation of inner freedom. It is the shedding of what no longer serves your growth. It is the space in which clarity arises, creativity blooms, and authentic joy can take root. And sometimes the universe doesn't just nudge you gently, it pushes you. This is not cruelty. It is love in the language of transformation. Trust it, embrace it, and watch as the life waiting for you unfolds in ways you could never have orchestrated. Let go, and you will discover that the universe never abandons. It redirects. It clears the weeds to make room for the garden of your higher self. The moment you release what you cannot control, the universe hands you what you were always meant to hold. Letting go is not an act of defeat. It is a declaration of trust in the invisible currents of life that guide you toward your true path. When the universe asks you to release, it is signaling that the pieces you are clinging to are no longer aligned with the trajectory of your growth. These pieces may appear essential, relationships, ambitions, routines, or beliefs, but their hold on you is often rooted in fear, habit, or comfort, rather than authentic necessity. Alignment is not found in accumulation or resistance, it is found in the delicate act of surrender. The moment you release what no longer resonates with your inner truth, you create space for what is waiting to enter your life. This space is sacred. It is where clarity emerges, where intuition can speak, and where your energy becomes unblocked and purposeful. Every person, circumstance, or possession that the universe asks you to release serves as a mirror, reflecting what has become a weight rather than a support. Clinging to these weights fragments your attention, dilutes your vitality, and distances you from the flow of life that wants to move through you. Alignment is experienced as a quiet knowing, a sense that despite uncertainty or discomfort, you are exactly where you are meant to be. Letting go is the practice of listening to that knowing, of trusting that the path revealed in the act of release is infinitely more expansive than anything you could hold on to out of fear. It is a conscious acknowledgement that life cannot be forced into the shape of your desires. It must be allowed to unfold, and often unfolding requires relinquishing control. The resistance that arises in this process is natural, for the ego fears emptiness, loss, and the unknown. Yet it is precisely in embracing that discomfort that alignment is forged. Each release is a recalibration of your energy, a realignment with the deeper currents that shape your existence. It is the difference between swimming against a current that tires and frustrates you and floating with a current that carries you toward horizons previously invisible. Letting go also reveals the subtle architecture of your true self. When you no longer define your value through attachment, status, or accumulation, you begin to inhabit a version of yourself that is whole, unfragmented, and inherently magnetic. Alignment is not an achievement, but a state of being, an attunement to the rhythm of life that becomes perceptible only when unnecessary burdens are set aside. In this state, life begins to orchestrate experiences, people, and opportunities that resonate harmoniously with your purpose. The act of letting go becomes both a ritual and a declaration, a ritual of trust in the intelligence of the universe, and a declaration that you will no longer compromise your inner coherence for temporary comfort or control. Through letting go, you do not lose, you align, and alignment is the soil from which your most authentic life can grow, nurtured by forces far greater than the fleeting desires of the ego. Pain and loss are often misunderstood as signs of failure, punishment, or misfortune. Yet they function as some of the most precise guides the universe offers. They arrive not to break you, but to awaken you. When something is taken away, whether a relationship, a dream, or a version of yourself you once relied on, it exposes the attachments that have quietly shaped your identity. Pain disrupts comfort and forces consciousness. It slows life down, demanding attention where avoidance once lived. In this way, pain becomes a messenger, revealing truths that comfort could never reach. Loss strips away illusions, showing you what was never truly stable and what you were depending on to feel whole. When pain enters your life, it marks a threshold. You are no longer able to live unconsciously, repeating patterns without reflection. The emotional intensity pulls hidden material to the surface, thoughts and fears that were buried under routine and distraction. This exposure is not accidental. Pain guides you inward, compelling you to confront parts of yourself that were ignored, denied, or suppressed. Without this confrontation, growth remains superficial. Loss creates the silence necessary for self-examination. And in that silence, you begin to hear the deeper voice within you that was previously drowned out by noise and attachment. Loss also teaches discernment. Through absence, you learn the difference between dependency and connection, between desire and purpose. What leaves your life often reveals what was misaligned with your inner truth. Pain clarifies what truly matters by removing what does not. It sharpens perception, helping you recognize where you compromised yourself, where you stayed too long, or where you built your identity around something external. In this sense, loss is not subtraction, it is refinement. It removes excess so that what remains is essential, authentic, and resilient. Pain guides by reshaping your relationship with meaning. When life flows easily, meaning is rarely questioned. But when loss arrives, it forces you to ask why you are here, what you value, and who you are beyond your roles and attachments. This questioning is not comfortable, yet it is transformative. It redirects your attention from external validation to internal alignment. Pain teaches humility, patience, and depth, qualities that cannot be acquired through success alone. It expands emotional intelligence and strengthens the capacity for empathy, both for yourself and others. Over time, pain reveals its deeper purpose. It initiates transformation. It breaks rigid structures within the psyche, allowing new perspectives to emerge. What once felt unbearable becomes the foundation of inner strength and clarity. Loss creates a before and after, not to trap you in nostalgia, but to mark the moment you began to see differently. When integrated rather than resisted, pain becomes wisdom. It guides you toward a more conscious life, one rooted not in fear of loss, but in trust that even in absence, life is still working in your favor, shaping you into a more whole and aware version of yourself. The illusion of control is one of the most subtle forces shaping human suffering. It convinces the mind that safety is found in prediction, that peace is secured through planning, and that life can be mastered through constant management. From an early age, control is mistaken for stability, and certain becomes a substitute for trust. Yet beneath this illusion lies a deeper truth. Life resists domination. The more tightly one attempts to grasp outcomes, people, or identities, the more tension is created within the psyche. Control promises protection, but it delivers anxiety because it places the individual in opposition to the natural movement of life. This illusion is rooted in fear of uncertainty. The unknown threatens the ego, which relies on familiar patterns to maintain its sense of identity. Control becomes a defense mechanism, a way to shield oneself from vulnerability, disappointment, and change. But life does not unfold in straight lines. It moves in cycles, disruptions, and contradictions that no amount of planning can fully contain. When reality diverges from expectation, suffering arises not from the event itself, but from the resistance to what is. The illusion of control collapses in moments of loss, crisis, or transition, revealing how fragile and exhausting this strategy truly is. Attempting to control life narrows perception. It confines awareness to rigid expectations and blinds the individual to possibilities that exist outside predetermined outcomes. When attention is consumed by managing every detail, intuition is silenced. Creativity, spontaneity, and growth are sacrificed for the comfort of predictability. Yet predictability is temporary, and its collapse often brings disillusionment. These moments are not failures, they are invitations to release the false belief that control equals safety. They reveal that flexibility, not rigidity, is the true source of resilience. The illusion of control also shapes relationships. When individuals attempt to control how others behave, feel, or evolve, connection turns into tension. Love becomes conditional, and presence is replaced by expectation. This need to manage others often masks unacknowledged fear of abandonment, rejection, or loss of identity. Letting go of control does not mean disengagement or passivity. It means recognizing the autonomy of others and the limits of one's influence. In doing so, relationships gain depth, authenticity, and mutual respect. Releasing the illusion of control shifts the inner posture from dominance to participation. Instead of forcing life to conform, one begins to listen, respond, and adapt. This shift does not eliminate uncertainty, it transforms the relationship with it. Uncertainty becomes a space of potential rather than threat. Trust replaces vigilance, and presence replaces obsession with outcomes. In surrendering control, clarity arises, not from certainty, but from alignment with the present moment. Life begins to move with greater ease, not because it is predictable, but because resistance has softened. What emerges is a deeper confidence, grounded not in the belief that everything can be controlled, but in the understanding that one can meet whatever arises with awareness, flexibility, and inner stability. To embrace the unknown is to step beyond the boundaries of conditioned thought and enter a space where life is no longer dictated by fear or anticipation. The unknown unsettles the mind because it offers no guarantees, no familiar markers to cling to. Yet it is precisely this absence of certainty that makes transformation possible. When the future is undefined, the self is not confined to past identities or habitual responses. Embracing the unknown is an act of courage, not because it removes fear, but because it allows movement despite fear. It signals a willingness to trust life without demanding proof in advance. The mind seeks continuity. It builds narratives from past experiences and projects them forward, mistaking repetition for safety. The unknown disrupts this pattern. It exposes the fragility of assumptions and challenges the belief that what has been will always be. This disruption is often experienced as anxiety, yet beneath it lies a powerful invitation to meet life as it is, rather than as it is expected to be. When the unknown is resisted, energy is spent trying to recreate familiar outcomes. When it is embraced, that same energy becomes available for awareness, adaptation, and growth. Embracing the unknown dissolves the illusion that clarity must precede action. In reality, clarity often emerges through action itself. Movement into unfamiliar territory reveals new information, insights, and capacities that cannot be accessed through thought alone. The unknown becomes a teacher, presenting experiences that stretch perception and expand inner resources. Through this process, self-trust deepens. Each step taken without certainty reinforces the understanding that one is capable of navigating change, responding creatively, and learning through experience rather than control. The unknown also restores presence. When the future cannot be predicted, attention naturally returns to the present moment. This presence sharpens perception and heightens sensitivity to subtle cues, intuition, emotion, and inner knowing. Life becomes less about outcomes and more about engagement. The richness of experience increases as awareness is no longer diluted by constant mental projection. In this state, fear loses some of its power, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer in command. To embrace the unknown is to accept impermanence. It acknowledges that life is in constant motion and that stability is found not in fixed circumstances but in inner adaptability. This acceptance fosters humility and openness, allowing change to be met with curiosity rather than resistance. Over time, the unknown transforms from a source of threat into a field of possibility. What once provoked anxiety becomes the space where creativity, insight, and renewal emerge. In embracing the unknown, one aligns with the deeper rhythm of life, discovering that uncertainty is not an obstacle to fulfillment, but the doorway through which a more authentic and expansive existence unfolds. Transformation through release begins the moment one recognizes that holding on is no longer an act of strength, but a source of stagnation. Release is often mistaken for loss, yet in reality it is a reorganization of energy. When outdated attachments, identities, or beliefs are loosened, something within the psyche is free to move, adapt, and evolve. Transformation does not arrive through force or accumulation, it emerges through subtraction. By releasing what has become heavy or restrictive, life creates the conditions necessary for renewal. Release challenges the instinct to preserve the familiar. The mind clings to what it knows, even when it no longer serves growth, because familiarity provides a sense of identity and predictability. Yet this clinging slowly narrows the field of possibility. Transformation requires space, and space cannot exist where everything is tightly held. Letting go opens inner territory that allows new perspectives, emotions, and capacities to surface. In this openness, the individual encounters aspects of the self that were previously overshadowed by attachment and resistance. The act of release also dissolves internal conflict. Much psychological tension arises from trying to maintain realities that are already shifting or ending. Energy is spent resisting change rather than engaging with it. When release occurs, this tension softens. What replaces it is not emptiness, but clarity. The psyche reorients itself, no longer fragmented by competing desires and fears. This clarity supports transformation by aligning thought, emotion, and action toward a more coherent sense of self. Transformation through release is rarely instantaneous. It unfolds in layers, each release revealing deeper attachments beneath the surface. This process requires patience and self-honesty, as the impulse to reclaim what was released can resurface during moments of uncertainty. Yet each layer shed strengthens inner resilience. Over time, release becomes less threatening and more intuitive, recognized as a natural response to inner signals rather than a forced decision. As release deepens, identity becomes more fluid. Instead of defining oneself through roles, outcomes, or external validation, a quieter and more stable sense of self emerges. This self is not dependent on control or certainty. It is grounded in awareness and adaptability. Transformation then becomes less about becoming someone new and more about uncovering what was always present beneath accumulated defenses and expectations. Through release, life begins to reorganize itself around authenticity rather than fear. Relationships, opportunities, and experiences align more naturally with inner values. What enters is not random, but resonant. Transformation through release ultimately reveals that growth is not achieved by holding on harder, but by trusting the process of letting go. In this trust, the individual discovers that release is not an ending, but a threshold, one that leads toward deeper wholeness, clarity, and a life lived in harmony with continual change. The belief that the universe punishes is rooted in a misunderstanding of adversity. When life disrupts plans, removes people, or collapses structures that once felt secure, the mind often interprets these moments as personal failures or cosmic judgment. Yet these experiences are not acts of punishment, they are acts of redirection. The universe does not operate on blame or reward, but on alignment. When something no longer corresponds with inner growth or deeper purpose, it begins to dissolve. What feels like loss is often a correction. Steering life away from paths that would lead to stagnation or fragmentation, redirection often arrives without explanation. It interrupts momentum, challenges assumptions, and destabilizes identities that were built on external conditions. This can feel unfair or cruel, especially when effort and intention were invested. However, effort alone does not guarantee alignment. The universe responds not only to what is pursued, but to who is becoming in the process. When external pursuits conflict with inner truth, friction arises. Redirection resolves this friction by removing what no longer fits, even if the removal is painful. The experience of redirection exposes the limits of personal perspective. From within a situation, it is difficult to see how certain attachments restrict growth. Familiarity can mask misalignment, and comfort can dull intuition. When the universe intervenes, it expands perspective by breaking continuity. This rupture creates distance from old patterns, making it possible to observe them more clearly. What once seemed essential may later be recognized as confining. In this way, redirection functions as a form of guidance that operates beyond conscious preference. Redirection also restores balance. When energy is invested in places that drain vitality or compromise authenticity, life gradually becomes strained. The body, emotions, and circumstances begin to signal that something is out of alignment. If these signals are ignored, stronger interventions follow. These are not punishments, but escalations in communication. The universe redirects attention toward what has been neglected, inner needs, unresolved fears, or unrealized potential. By disrupting the outer world, it invites recalibration of the inner world. Over time, patterns become visible. Moments once labeled D as failures reveal themselves as turning points. Relationships that ended made space for deeper connection. Paths that collapsed prevented long-term dissatisfaction. What initially felt like rejection becomes protection in retrospect. Redirection refines direction, guiding life toward greater coherence and meaning. When this understanding deepens, resistance softens, trust replaces resentment, and curiosity replaces self-blame. Instead of asking why something was taken away, attention shifts to what is being made possible. The universe does not punish growth, it insists upon it. Redirection is its language of care, guiding life toward experiences that support wholeness rather than repetition. In recognizing this, adversity transforms from an enemy into a compass, pointing steadily toward a more aligned and conscious way of living. And so when life asks you to release, to endure pain, to step into uncertainty, or to watch familiar structures fall away, remember that nothing is being taken from you without purpose. What is leaving is making room. What feels like chaos is a quiet reordering. You are not broken, delayed, or punished. You are being refined. Each ending carries an intelligence that the mind may resist, but the soul recognizes. When you stop fighting the process and begin to listen, you realize that life has always been guiding you toward greater alignment, deeper awareness, and truer expression. Trust the redirection, honor the release, and allow the unknown to shape you. What unfolds next will not be a repetition of the past, but the emergence of a self that could only be revealed by letting go.